Doop.
In the year 2009, J.J. Abrams auditioned for Star Wars.
Twice. Well, not. I guess he did it once in 2009, right?
Yeah.
Oh,
I feel like this film.
It's kind
I got
of
a piggy.
first. Yeah, sorry. You're coming through kind of funky today, Luke. You check your connection. Maybe we'll just restart that.
Oh, give me a sec. I'll unplug the mic and plug it in again.
Okay.
Hello.
Okay, we'll try that today. You might just be getting some chop on the internet today. So
Possibly.
okay, let's take two that one then.
1 second, because now I think it is actually actively using the wrong mic. Okay. Does that sound better?
It sounds better.
Okay.
I wonder if you should actually turn off your video. Because
maybe
you keep freezing.
My laptop's just turned on, so it's trying to load up everything else at the same time. Anyway, now I can't even open Zoom. All right, yeah, I will turn off my video to be safe.
Okay.
There you go. You have a picture of me. Do you want me to do the opening again?
Yeah.
Okay. In the year 2009, J.J. Abrams auditioned for Star Wars.
For the first time, just that's like kind of a Star Trek tradition that you do your demo or your pilot twice, right?
That's true. Yeah.
Because TOS has two pilots, but yep. This is the 2009 Star Trek, which it's a title too generic because as I've been putting this in our schedule and stuff, I've been putting that parentheses 2009.
Everyone just calls it Star Trek 2009, yeah, or Star Trek 09, or
yeah. Anyway, we do have a guest today, and it's a fellow who I think he said it's his first podcast here, but I've been reading him since I think Deep Space Nine was on the air. He's from Jammers Reviews, and for me, that's kind of been my go-to source for sci-fi television information. I was even there last night for an unrelated thing just to check a guest star on the Orville. So, hello, Jamahl Epsicokhan. Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
So I guess I got to ask a bit about your own Trek geek, having been in the game so long yourself. Which is your show?
Which is my show?
Yeah.
I'd probably have to go with Deep Space Nine.
Oh, okay. Interesting. So
it's a tough call between that and Next Generation, but definitely one of those two. But I probably have to give the edge to Deep Space Nine.
Yeah, I guess in the end, I got to be a TNG guy. But and Luke, I assume because of Patrick Stewart, you're a TNG guy, because I've never asked you this before.
I think of myself as a TNG guy, but I actually haven't watched as much Deep Space Nine as I'd like. So when I finally get around to finishing a rewatch of it, I might change my mind.
Okay. And Jamahl, I've just as a longtime reader, again, I'm curious how you got your site started and rolling.
So actually, so when I first started the site, I started it in college. So I guess if you go way back, the way I originally started it not as a site, but I was posting my reviews out on Usenet, which if you don't know what Usenet is, this was a text-based news group place where you could post news group messages, and it was categorized. So there was a group out there called rec.arts.startrek.current, and then there's another group called rec.arts.startrek.reviews. But my freshman year of college, I just decided I was going to start posting my reviews out on those news groups. And over the course of the next year or so, I was just collecting all my reviews, and I finally published a website. Because at the time, the internet was brand new. For most people, I had access to it through my university free student account. I hadn't been on the internet prior to that fall semester when I arrived on campus. But had these resources available to just be able to post a website and create a website. And so I collected the reviews I had and put them online, and I just started posting every week. At the time, Deep Space Nine was on, and then Voyager premiered, I believe it was January of '95, which was my second semester there on campus. And so I was posting both Deep Space Nine and Voyager. And as I started to get a collection of reviews and people were replying to them in the Usenet groups, I realized I could build a site, and I had access to free space on my student account. And so I just started posting them there as well, and then cross promoting them at the bottom of my postings on Usenet. So that's how I got this the start for the site. And the longer I kept at it, the more it just kind of built up. I remember in '97, after I'd had this site at like a couple of years, I put a hit counter on it just out of curiosity to see how many people were kind of visiting it, because I had no way of tracking it. There was no real way of doing metrics back then. But I just put one of those hit counter scripts on there just to see, and 24 hours after I put it out there, I saw that it was getting hundreds or thousands. I can't remember the number of hits. And so I was kind of surprised that people were coming to the site. And so I just kept posting and kept building, and the library just got bigger over the years, and I continued to just kind of chip away at it. And I've been doing it ever since.
Yeah. I mean, for me, it was probably about 1999, sitting in the University of Georgia. And at that time, if you typed in Star Trek reviews, I guess a lot of us got sent your way. So it's probably how that started.
I remember I posted, I submitted it to Yahoo to get they had categorized places where you could find websites, and there was science fiction, and they had a whole categorized page for Star Trek, and I posted it out there, and that was kind of the way I promoted it, just posting a link out there and submitting it, and it living out there on that Yahoo listing for years. And this was before Google was even a thing, and that's how I think I got a lot of traffic between that and just putting the URL at the bottom of my Usenet posts. That's how I drove all my traffic to my website.
All right. Well, let's skip ahead 10 years to, at least from where I'm first checking your site, to the only Star Trek in quite a long period of time, because the last Trek we'd seen was 2004, was it, for the last Enterprise episode?
I think it was 05.
That might be right. Yeah. I didn't watch it on live TV. Actually, that's the first year I lived in Japan, so I didn't really notice Enterprise till it was DVD time. But and then Discovery, it's like 2018, so it's pretty long dry spell. So I know I was super excited for this. I went with my father. We got a couple margaritas and watched it not 100% sober and enjoyed it. Just, it seemed really idealistic at the time. I guess 2009 people were in a slightly better mood than they were in 2022. So it was like a it was a lollipop of a movie at the time, I guess. And I have seen it several times. The last I watched it maybe 2 months ago. It's the first Trek that I think I really got my 12-year-old daughter to watch attentively, which meant that then I had to put on Into Darkness. I even had to buy Into Darkness again for Japanese subtitles, because that's her first language. I felt slightly dirty about that, but
yeah, I'm one of the few defenders of Into Darkness. I take a lot of flack for that on my own website, just because I actually recommend that movie.
Well, we'll get to that one here, of course. My forward review is a good movie, bad Trek, but yeah, it is. I don't hate watching. I just, yeah, they as Luke said before, they cured death. Luke, what was your 2009 experience? When did you get your pick with Shatner? Is it before or after this?
Like a year or two after, actually, because that was with a later girlfriend. No, this one I remember being very excited for. I hadn't watched much Enterprise, so for me it felt like Trek hadn't been on since like Voyager, Deep Space Nine, and Next Generation had finished. I think maybe Enterprise was on like a weird channel or something in the UK, whereas the previous tracks had been like primetime BBC. Me and my family sat down and watched them TV. So this was after I'd gone back, bought all the DVDs of the original series, become a full-on Trekkie. And I was with my first like serious girlfriend. I'd finally managed to get her interested in Star Trek. Went and saw this one at the theater. Very excited. I think I wore my gold shirt uniform to see this film. And then a couple of months later, this is the first film I ever watched at Glastonbury Festival. The music festival in the UK has a cinema tent. And going to see a movie at the theater in the UK, people don't really make any noise. I've seen like reactions to Avengers or whatever from American cinemas, and people are like, woo, yeah. You don't get that in the UK. People would hate you if you made that much noise in a cinema. But when they're all drunk in a tent at a music festival, people are shouting at the film. So that was my first experience of that, and people being like, woo, Scotty, when he shows up. Or, you tell him, Jim. So, yeah, I had two great cinema experiences with this film. And I've watched it a fair few times since on DVD.
Hey, Jamahl, what was your first experience with this one?
I believe I saw this one in a theater in suburban Chicago area. My wife, then we weren't engaged yet at the time, but we went and saw it with some friends of ours on, I believe it was an IMAX. And I just remember that was like the first IMAX theater I think I'd been to, because we didn't have an IMAX here in town, and I didn't usually go to IMAX movies. Whenever I went to the theater, I just usually went to the regular screening. But I just remember, it was huge on the screen, and I also remember there was like a trailer for Transformers 2 before it, and it like made us motion sick almost because it was so massive. But I do recall the audience definitely was into it. There were several lines I know that kind of brought the house down. But yeah, I saw it there in the theater, and then I saw it later, obviously on DVD again.
So this is the Star Trek for the women in your life. Women. Yeah, you get what I'm trying to say. That plural doesn't quite work. Okay. But it does seem that maybe it's like I guess this is the first gateway drug for Trek these days.
Yeah, I think this is a way you can get people into it. I'm sure we'll get into later, is it or isn't it a good representation of Star Trek? But as a way to be like, here's the basic idea, here's some nice characters, it looks pretty. It does that job very well.
Yeah, I once put on The Trouble with Tribbles for my daughter, and she just laughed at it, So you can't just
what a
throw
one
60
to
Trek on
choose.
someone.
You
Well,
can't. I have just turned 60 Trek on someone, but I use like a really good one, not that.
Was she laughing with it or laughing at it?
Well, just because it looks so antiquated, right? And it was a couple of years ago. She was 9 or 10, so it's just a time when maybe she might watch something that's not animated. So, but yeah, it took me I remember I'd put this on like several times for my family, and we never got past Thor. It was like we were eating lunch, and then it's like, okay, I'm gonna go read now. Oh, okay, guys, we watch Star Trek movie. Before we get a little deeper in, I will go ahead and give you a plot for this one for those that may have forgotten. I have seen enough times. I did not reference a wiki page at all, so we'll see how it rolls. Somewhere in our future, but in Star Trek's past, the USS Kelvin is attacked and mortally wounded by a time-traveling Romulan mining vessel. Newly minted father George Kirk takes command of the ship and saves the lives of most of his crewmates, but loses his own life in the process. 25 years later, son Jim Kirk is living a rough and tumble life in Iowa despite his high intelligence. With Captain Pike as his mentor, Kirk begins his Starfleet career in a bar with a broken nose, but is ready to be an officer within 3 years. His unconventional approach at beating the simulator Kobayashi Maru scenario gets him expelled. right as the Romulan ship reappears over Vulcan. Kirk has his friend Dr. McCoy dope him up and scuttle him onto the starship Enterprise. En route, Kirk realizes that it's a trap due to messages intercepted by communications officer Uhura, and the ship dewarps into a debris field of Starfleet vessels. Romulan Captain Nero kidnaps Captain Pike and implodes Vulcan. Spock, the Vulcan commander now in command of the Enterprise, jettisons Kirk to an ice planet because he is really too outspoken. On the planet, Kirk first runs into a monster and then into a much-aged Spock from the future. He had tried to save Romulus from a supernova in the future, failed, and now Nero wants to destroy the Federation as he feels it destroyed Romulus. The duo then find a very cold engineer, Scott. With old Spock's help, they somehow beam onto a warping Enterprise. Kirk takes command once he proves younger Spock is emotionally compromised. The crew reaches Earth and stops Nero from destroying that planet as well. The Enterprise and the Romulan ship have an out-and-out space battle somewhere around Jupiter, while Kirk and Spock beam over to rescue Captain Pike. Nero is sucked into a singularity of his own making that the Enterprise barely escapes. All is formal back on Earth as Pike is now an admiral and Kirk keeps command of the Enterprise for further adventures. There's a lot of plot in this one. I left out like a lot.
I mean,
there's a lot of details in this one. Maybe
yeah, because
the
the actual plot is very simple, but it gives you lots and lots of little snippets of everyone because it's trying to introduce you to all these characters.
Yeah, I didn't even mention Sulu or Chekhov, so which I guess the show sometimes failed to do also, but
yeah.
Watching it this time, I definitely noticed that it's always Jim Kirk. They never give him a James.
He calls himself James right at the start.
Oh, like as a little boy, yeah.
Yeah. And I think like when he's getting bollocked by the Admiralty, he gets called James.
So I guess we should. Well, first we'll do actors a little bit. So Chris Pine, how's he for a Kirk for you?
I thought Chris Pine was great. It's really hard to step into a role like that where, you know, everyone is, you know, equates Kirk with Shatner and Shatner with Kirk, and trying to take over that role is difficult. And you know, to Chris Pine's credit, he kind of brought the spirit and kind of attitude of Kirk, but it never became like, you know, the same where he was doing an impression or trying to do riffs on Shatner-esque types of things. So I think he did a good job of trying to make it his own, but while also, you know, being true to the spirit of the character.
I think he's this would probably be my opinion for most of the cast. He's really good, but the film doesn't give him many chances to show it because he's constantly having to run around and be an action man and be rebellious. So you don't get much time to see him being, you know, leaderly, be a captain.
Yeah, and he gets his ass kicked a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah,
because he never put both hands together and gave him the two-handed punch.
He didn't learn the Kirk fu. That's the problem. Maybe an interesting question would be, does anyone come out? Do you prefer any of these to the original crew? Maybe that's a loaded question for the actors, but
I mean, I think Sulu and Chekhov get a little more presence in these films than they often did in the older stuff. So I have a lot of love for these versions.
And Uhura also, I think, has a larger role definitely than she did in any of the TNG movies or I'm sorry, the TOS movies or the TOS series.
Well, that was always Nichelle Nichols' thing. She wanted to quit the show because she didn't have anything to do, right? And, you know, famously was told by Martin Luther King Jr., just the fact you're there is important, so please stay.
Yeah, but yeah, this Uhura does get to do a lot more than just answer the phone.
Yeah. And continuing into the sequels. Yeah, I was thinking, though, you're saying Kirk or Pine doesn't captain much in this. He doesn't really get to do that much till the third movie, does he?
Mm-hmm.
So that is a plus on that one. Simon Pegg is just Simon Pegg. It's kind of hard to make a comparison there. Like,
Yeah, he's not even doing the same region of Scotland for the accent.
yeah, he's just doing Simon Pegg, but it's like, well, I like him, so I
Well,
guess
he is doing a Scottish accent, but he deliberately chose to do a different one because I can't remember. I don't know the names of the different Scottish accents, but it's his family have that accent, so he just found that easier
Oh, okay. That
than
makes
doing
sense,
the
I
one
guess.
Doohan was doing.
Yeah. And I mean, if you watch the animated series and you know that John's doing like most of the voices, it'll blow your
Yeah.
mind because like none of them sound like Scotty.
The so Simon Pegg and his little sidekick, those two actors are among like I think it's only 3 actors ever who've been in Star Trek, Star Wars, and Doctor Who.
One of them because he's a little person, I guess.
Yeah, he just gets a lot of those roles. But yeah, Simon Pegg has done all 3, which is very rare apparently.
So this movie clears director John Waters' statement that every good movie needs a midget or a vomit scene. This one almost had the vomit scene, but
Yeah, it's pretty close.
Sorry, that's a direct quote for the nomenclature there. So I feel like I can't change the quote. I said little person the first time and then un-PC'd it with a quote.
Well, did Simon Pegg have any specific connection to Star Trek that he'd mentioned previously in terms of like an interest in it before?
Oh yeah. He's like a famous super geek. So when he was doing like Spaced and stuff back in the early 2000s, his characters were always like into Star Trek or into Star Wars or
because didn't he co-wrote the third Kelvin film?
Yes, right? I think so. So yeah, he was already this was like a passion project for him at least.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you have lots of people rolling on. Again, we have Seth MacFarlane just making his very own Star Trek because he's so obsessed with it, which that good toward him, I guess. But yeah, it you do get down a Trekkie rabbit hole, right? As everyone here can probably attest to.
Yeah, when you have that much clout, I guess you can make your own fan fiction and a television show.
Let's go to our villain, Eric Bana's Nero. I've been realizing the more that I'm especially teaching on Zoom, I think I give the Nero hello a lot. Maybe because like you're hitting the button to like bring someone in and your face is in the camera, like hello. So I think I give a lot of Nero hellos on Zoom.
So the weird thing about Eric Bana, I know he's a good actor. He's done like Munich and stuff. But when I think of him, it's this, Troy, and the Hulk. So I just think of Eric Bana as a terrible actor with no screen presence.
Yeah, I think the most memorable thing about Nero is when he says, "Hi, Christopher, I'm Nero," which I laugh at that every time. It's just such a weird and amusing way that he kind of answers a hail.
Yeah, the first time when in the theater, I was like, "What the hell?" But every time I see it, I kind of like it better. I don't know. I think I don't want to say he's bad in this movie. It's an acquired taste. The first time I saw the movie, I definitely thought like, what is up with this villain? And each time I watch, I actually do like his performance like a little bit better.
I don't hate him, but that's a problem because I don't, hate him. He's a villain who's destroyed Vulcan, who's meant to have this personal vendetta against Spock and the Federation, and he's just there. Like he's a bit of a damp squib.
He makes it.
Yes, it's kind of a problem. The character there's just not a whole lot to it. It's just another vengeful villain. And if you really think about why is he so angry? I mean, I understand. Okay, Romulus was destroyed. Why does he blame Spock when Spock was trying to save Romulus? It just feels very forced that he's so bent on getting his revenge on Spock and destroying the Federation because of what happened. There's just not enough there. It feels very thin.
It feels like a lot of first Marvel movies where we're concentrating on introducing the heroes, so the villain's just kind of there. Like Guardians of the Galaxy had that in a big way. Like Iron Man, Cap, they always have just like a pretty basic villain for the first film. And then I think that's why in The second one, they doubled down so hard on like, okay, we're getting Benedict Cumberbatch in to do Khan because we need to have a villain.
I'll almost agree with you, but Captain America did have the Red Skull as its
That's
first
true.
villain, so at least it was iconic in that case.
Yeah.
But that was Hugo Weaving was a wet skull. Wet skull.
Phoning it
today.
in. Yeah. The wet skull.
The wet skull.
I mean, ideally, you want your skull to be wet. If your skull is dry, you're in trouble.
Yeah. Sorry, I can't talk today. My voice is cracking. I'm doing Wessels. I'll blame that on Chekhov, I guess. But oh, that's funny. They do put that he's blue collar. I guess that's part of it, right? He's not supposed to be just like, like fully set into evil, although I did have 25 years to do that. And the other thing, and sorry, I know, Luke, you're about to say something there, but the other thing is movies should probably stand on their own, but this one really does benefit from reading the Countdown comic book, which probably shouldn't be the case, but you get a lot more of like what Spock did, the motivation, stuff like that. And sorry, Luke, go ahead.
No, I was just to agree with you. There's a bit at the end where Spock and Kirk are just like ripping through Nero's crew. And I remember the last night when I was watching it, I was like, oh, wait, that makes sense because this isn't like a spaceship full of soldiers. This is a mining vessel. And here's these two trained Starfleet officers who showed up. Like, yeah, they're probably going to win a gunfight.
Moving on.
I was just going to say real quick, wasn't there a whole subplot that was cut from the movie? I think I remember hearing this like in a commentary track or something where Nero spent a lot of those 25 years in a Klingon prison or something, but they cut it because it was just too confusing and convoluted.
Yeah, there was definitely deleted scene where they were captured by Klingons for those 25 years. And there was a whole thing about they gave the Klingons helmets because they couldn't be bothered to come up with a Klingon design yet. So, but yeah, I mean, they could have easily just written in like, he comes out of the black hole briefly for that interaction with George and then falls back into it for 25 years or something.
Yeah, that probably would have been a better idea. It's
a really weird point that he's just been floating there for 25 years.
Yeah, just waiting for 25 years to get his revenge. Hanging out, I guess.
Like, yeah, maybe Nero is that obsessed, but is his whole crew still going to be like spoiling for revenge? Or are they just going to be sick of waiting around on this mining vessel?
He's got a bunch of rimmers. It is basically the Red Dwarf situation.
Yeah, I know you meant Red Dwarf, but when you just talk about here's a mining vessel full of men for 25 years, he's got a bunch of rimmers.
We know who Rimmer is. Character-wise, so we're Pine.
Well, before we finish on the actors, we probably should mention Zachary Quinto.
Oh yeah, sure.
He was like,
can't leave him out.
Yeah, because I was a Heroes watcher, so I remember in the run up to this film, like Quinto campaigning to be Spock. Like he was super keen to be Spock.
Had the second series of Heroes come out when this movie came out? I know it's a tough question because I think
we were quite a few. I think Heroes started in like 2005 or something. I think we were well into Heroes.
Oh, so we already knew that it kind of like took a nosedive.
Yeah.
Okay.
He's the one guy who successfully jumped ship to something else, I guess.
They didn't save the cheerleader. What I was going to say like he seems to. Okay, what I noticed last night is he's one of those guys that has to shave every 10 minutes. I don't know why that caught me yesterday, but I was like, man, he's just got 5 o'clock shadow all the time because you don't think of Nimoy as having that. There's something about Nimoy's arched look. Like, Shatner looks like Shatner, Pine looks like Pine, who cares? But there is something about, maybe it's like, in the 60s when like originally Mr. Spock's too satanic, maybe in part just because his face is so kind of angular and arched. We don't get that with Quinto. So he's kind of like a good looking Vulcan.
Yeah, he has a little bit of the same problem that Pine had, where because they're trying to give him all of this dramatic stuff, he doesn't get much time to just Spock.
Right. In fact, I guess Nimoy gets a lot more time to just Spock in this movie, which it makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, you don't get Leonard Nimoy in your film and not let him Spock, so...
Well, if anything, I mean, it was probably even harder trying to live up to the character of Spock than living up to the character of Kirk. So Quinto probably had his work cut out for him even more. But again, I thought he nailed it. I mean, I thought, kind of. I saw this in kind of both this and in Into Darkness. It's sort of like an earlier version of Spock where he hasn't quite, mastered his emotions yet, and he's, more likely to lose control. So it gives you kind of an earlier version of Spock that you haven't previously seen. So that kind of gives you a little different take on it, but while also trying to do the whole Spock thing, I think he really, again, he found a good balance of trying to bring his own spin on the character while honoring the legacy.
Luke, did you ever get a Spock deep in Discovery?
No, I got about halfway through season 2.
Oh, okay. Then I'll leave comparisons for that for another time.
I didn't meet their Spock, but I didn't get to see much of him, and he was still being a little crazy. So
yeah. And I guess and honestly, I guess making that comparison now is kind of stupid because in a year it'll make a lot more sense once we get the new Star Trek series. So
yeah. Well, also
like
I think next year we're getting another one of these films. So
oh yeah, I did see news about that. I don't expect it would have been very good, but I think everybody wanted to see what the Tarantino Trek was going to be.
Yeah, that would have been one of those kind of morbid curiosity type things. I mean, I love Tarantino, but it just seems like a really odd fit. I think that one was better for headlines than if it had actually gotten made.
Well, I would have loved, because I presumably Tarantino is a big Star Trek fan, and that's why he wanted to do it. If he
kept going on about how he wanted to be an R-rated Star Trek film. And it's like, well, why?
What I would have loved, it would have been if he'd just done it like really straight, and it had just not been Tarantino at all. And you'd had all these Tarantino fans go into the movie, and they'd got like the motion picture part 2.
Yeah, it's one of those things where I just don't see how that possibly could have worked, because it would have been a compromise between trying to be true to Star Trek and trying to be true to Tarantino, and you end up doing neither. Yeah, we'd have had the Superman 3 Richard Pryor situation where Superman didn't want to tell Richard Pryor what to do. Richard Pryor didn't want to tell Superman what to do, so no one put any personality into anything.
Superman didn't direct that movie, Yeah,
he did.
Okay.
Superman's real, and he made his own movies.
Wow, Superman 3, I don't think I've seen that since it was on video in the 80s. On HBO in the 80s.
Well, it's because if you watch Superman 3, then it's like, well, I guess I got to watch 4 too.
Oh, gosh. I saw that in the theater.
I think I'd rather watch 4 than 3. Like, 4's in the so bad it's good camp.
I was the 8-year-old boy that, put it on and whatever, 87 or whenever, and was like, what is this? At like age 8, like I was like, I realized that something was wrong with this movie. Not Trek, of course, to Superman 4. No, it is kind of that's definitely a curio.
Yeah.
I can't remember what you said, 87 that came out?
That was it's probably a year that or a year.
It sounds about right.
But,
yeah. I just remember, however old I was when it came out. If it was 87, I would have been 11, I guess. But I just remember thinking, oh, wow, this is terrible. Even at age 10 or 11 or whatever.
Exactly.
Matt, would you say that was the film where you learned that films could be bad?
It might be, although it might have been one of those romantic comedies I've mentioned recently where the first half is quite funny and the second half is a total slog.
Okay.
That might have been the first. No, I think I remember it was Heart Beeps, because it had a really cool box with like puppety things, but the movie, I think it has Andy Kaufman in it, so you want it to be good, and it's terrible.
Okay.
That was probably the first time I realized was terrible. There's kind of a disconnect with the Kirk character here, because we're getting full on like semi-retirement, I'll do what I want Shatner Kirk from the movies, as opposed to like by the book Kirk, which is what you get in TOS.
Yeah, well, people always forget whenever they talk about young Kirk in TOS, it's like he was such a dweeb at the academy. He always played by the rules. But I guess like that's why they've done the whole changing time, killing George, making him a slightly different character thing. Because this is the Kirk people remember. People remember Kirk as Shatner playing Shatner, forgetting that there was, 60 some episodes of him not being that at all prior.
Sorry, I just
Well,
remembered.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just saying, I was just remembering the Futurama line. What is it? 80 episodes, 30 good ones. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, no, I think that the whole alternate timeline, it starts with Kirk's father dying on the Kelvin, and I think the whole point, obviously, is not having that father figure kind of drove him to be more rebellious, less respectful of authority, and it took Pike to challenge him into joining Starfleet.
I will just say, watching it again last night, I remembered at the theater, that whole opening section is so good.
You mean the Kelvin?
Yeah, from that opening shot where you're just like seeing the Kelvin's hull and it zooms out, the whole like the sequence of them dying to save them all, the music, the visuals, it was just phenomenal. And I remember being like, oh, damn, this is Star Trek. I'm in a movie theater watching Star Trek right now. And yeah, that opening is great.
Yeah, I guess for me, I think I've seen every Star Trek since 5 on opening night. So yeah, I guess it's like we talked before with the Matrix films. Like you just recently saw your first Matrix in a theater, and I'm like, oh, I saw all of them opening night.
Yeah, true.
So I mean, it is cool. I mean, it definitely higher budget. Before someone told me about the lens flares, I guess they looked cool.
I didn't really notice the lens flare thing, but it is definitely there.
No, there was one bridge scene. Maybe it's when Kirk gets back from the ice planet and is just like, I'm like, flare on the bridge. I'm like, this is a little bit excessive here.
Doesn't seem like a good way to operate a spaceship, that's for sure.
I mean, it is excessive, but again, it's one of those things where do you really notice it until someone finally points it out? And I mean, I don't think I noticed it the first time I watched the movie, but now that this is the completely derided thing that J.J. Abrams is known for now is lens flare. Now you just see it all the time whenever you watch the movie.
Yeah, it's the meme now, but I don't think I noticed it particularly.
I don't think he put rocks and dirt in the bulkheads of the Enterprise, though. So let's give him credit for that. Because usually, when the ship gets hit, it's like rocks and dirt. It's like, why do you have rocks and dirt in the bulkheads? And, I mean, because it looks cool is the answer, of course. But I think this one does just have sparks and shaking, which makes more sense when the ship is rattled.
Yeah.
We mentioned a little bit about Spock already with the actor. Do we want to do the character? Of course, this Spock is quite different too, having had his planet destroyed. Again, that makes a very different Spock than, well, we see what happens to our original Spock too in this situation, of course. But these nature versus nurture, I guess is why I'm throwing at it. How much is just like it's the nature of these characters because they're having quite different lives.
Well, it is like Spock is cold and logical because he's trained himself to be that way. Like I really like the line from Sarek that's like, yeah, emotion runs deeper in us than in the humans. That's why we control it. So it's not like Spock was never a robot, and we've seen him be emotional plenty of times in the original version. And as Spock Prime says, like, I just watched my planet explode and my mother die. Yeah, I'm emotionally compromised. I don't think it's a problem that Spock acts the way he does in this film. Not to get too deep into it, in Into Darkness, he's that way again with far less reason. But I think it works fine here because, as you said, Jamahl, it's an earlier Spock. It's an origin Spock. This is him before he's learned to control himself that much.
Yeah, and of course, there's always our smiling Spock in the cage for precedent. So never trust a smiling Vulcan, and definitely not a laughing one.
I just see one moment. I'm sorry. 1 second. I'll be right back.
No worries.
Okay, that's enough. I was shutting up just to leave space. I can spot it really easy in the in the feed.
What did you think of like Uhura as a character?
Oh, I was actually going to ask you if we're doing a 12:30 Zoom meeting.
Yeah, we are.
Okay.
I just got a couple.
1:30
I wasn't originally, but there's some stuff I got to mention. So
Okay.
okay, Matt
Sorry
took
about
that
that.
time. Matt took that time to ask me stuff about work, so it's all good.
And then I left in a little silence, so when I edit, I can spot it real easy.
Okay, good. Had some visitors banging on the door. Children.
Ah, yeah.
So they're ball in your yard, or
Let's shift dork a bit. You were mentioning how cool the Kelvin is, right?
Hmm.
What is your favorite Enterprise?
you asking me? Because you know my favorite Enterprise. It's the
Go
pregnant
ahead.
duck itself, the Enterprise D.
Right. What is that, the pregnant duck, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I guess I'm gonna go for 79 Refit Enterprises being the number one. This one, the one in this one is pretty cool, but it's
Ah,
big.
I'd put this one above 79 refit. I don't like the sort of square nacelles on the 70s and 80s movies Enterprise.
Maybe because we get such a nice view of that one. Because in this
Hmm.
one, it's just a 5-second view because Kirk has to hurl, so he doesn't have time to stare at it lovingly for 10 minutes.
But I like the sort of the wrap. It almost looks like a Corvette of an Enterprise. It's got like a nice 60s aesthetic, this one. I really like it.
The thing that bugs me actually is just the size. This is really super geek, but it bugs me that's like 3 times the size of the TV show Enterprise.
I guess, but when we see the shuttle landing in it, I'm like, oh, it's not actually that big.
Yeah, but think about how small the shuttle is in the original series. So the explanation sometimes being, oh, they got such a threat when the Kelvin was exploded that Starfleet is just like everything's on steroids in this universe.
Well, while we're on the Enterprise, I know it doesn't make sense and it contradicts the old law. I love the shot of it being built on Earth.
Cool shot. Doesn't make sense you'd build it there, but yeah, the shot is definitely cool.
Yeah.
Of course, this Enterprise gets lots of micro brews every day.
Yeah. I do miss a nice engine room with a big central glowing, whatever those are supposed to be in engine rooms.
Yeah, they're clearly
I definitely had on my notes, engineering looks like a brewery. And what was that? Was that because it was filmed on a location that was actually a brewery or
Yeah, I
like
think
that?
it was literally filmed in a brewery.
So they didn't build a set for engineering. They went on location
Mhm.
to a brewery, and that's why the Enterprise engineering looks like a brewery.
And then they just smashed their own continuity by actually building a cool engine room set for the second 2 films.
I guess they never explicitly tell us we're seeing the engine. So maybe this is just the cooling systems, and that's why it's full of tanks of water. But
yeah. And these ships are so wet too, right? Because
Yeah.
like that area, like where Uhura's workstation, I feel like that's what Nero's ship is just like, has 2 centimeters of water everywhere apparently. I guess they're dredging. Maybe it's coffee. They're getting coffee from the nebulas.
Well, it's because they've just been floating there for 25 years. Their toilets don't work anymore. They're just peeing on the floor.
Pea corner. Yep, smell-o-vision back again. Sometimes it's good we don't get it.
You talk about like dudes' apartments if you leave them in too long a college and not seeing any girls. This is 25 years of men just living in the same spaceship. They've all turned into the worst slobs imaginable.
So I keep mentioning the Orville because I'm in the middle of my watch of that show. I just watched the one where they're being held in their cargo bay, and it's like, yeah, I just came back from the pea corner. Yeah, we just all decided that was the corner for it. don't go there unless you really need to.
Yeah, but after 25 years, every corner is the pea corner.
Yeah, exactly. So that explains the ship. Okay, I'll buy your explanation of that. The other thing that it is all cool, but the Preston I don't like, and we just saw it in Discovery recently again, is that these ships are apparently filled with large carnivorous spaces between the decks.
Do you mean cavernous spaces?
Yes. Yeah, carnivorous would eat you. Okay,
Yeah.
sorry. Those are words you mix up sometimes, but maybe it's Into Darkness where you see it more. I don't remember quite, but I do remember that one of these films starts showing you the in-between spaces, like the turbo lifts are just going through giant like amusement park, rooms or something. I don't like that.
Yeah, you'd imagine it's pretty claustrophobic on a spaceship.
Yeah, you'd be maximizing efficiency by trying to conserve space, not having big open spaces. But what looks cool? That's the question.
Yeah,
a lot of these things. Is it cooler to have a big open space or have it look like a real aircraft carrier?
well, I mean, I guess that gets into like my main problem with this film is that more so than almost any other Star Trek, it does make the choice of, instead of what's makes sense, what's cool.
Yeah, there is a certain amount of that. Okay, we could take it philosophically. Here's the thing, that a big difference between a Picard or original series Kirk at the end, I guess time is of the essence. Nero's ship's about to be eaten. They offer help. Nero's like, I'll watch Romulus die 1,000 times rather than let you help me. That's not very Corbomite maneuver.
But also, like, yeah, what about all of your crew? Do they consent to that? Like, Kirk and Spock are definitely war criminals at the end here.
But yeah, the first like normal production episode of Trek had like the opposite message.
Well, fair enough if that's like Nero's message, because yeah, he's mad. But yeah, Kirk and Spock probably should have done a bit more to save all of those miners who've just been led on his crusade.
Yeah, they do have. I mean, I guess they still did. They have transporters at that point because the
Yeah.
ship had. No, the ship cracked after that, so they did have the transporters.
Yeah.
Once the ship is cracked, I get that maybe they can't do so much helping, but
Yeah.
Well, they go even further. They just say, "Okay, well, fine." They open fire.
Yeah.
Exactly, anti-Corbomite. The Corbomite's on Nero's ship in this case, so yeah.
Yeah, it's not even the Batman Begins, well, I'm not gonna save you clause. It's okay, we're just gonna shoot you.
So yeah, I guess that's not very Trek.
But yeah, so the first half or 2/3 of this film, when it basically is the Academy movie that we've been waiting for, and it's just meeting this character, meeting this character, meeting this character. We didn't talk about him, but Carl Urban as Bones is great. I mean, he's probably, apart from maybe Quinto, the one who's most trying to do an impression.
Yeah,
I would agree with that.
But I like Carl Urban in everything, Lord of the Rings, Dread, this, and yeah, he's very good here. But yeah, you're just meeting these characters. They're just how you remember them. It's bright, it's colorful. Here's the Enterprise, doesn't she look beautiful? And then you get into the third act, and it's just like, well, we need to have a Hollywood third act. So here's a villain, and we're going to do they're going to do a mission where they sneak onto the ship, and here's some action. And
Well, 2009's right smack in the center of too much origin story, goal posted by Spider-Man and the Amazing Spider-Man, right?
Yeah.
All the Marvel movies are starting off at this time. It had been a while since they'd done a Trek, so they were like, oh, no one knows what this is.
But also, we hadn't actually seen an origin story, right? Because that's even back in when they were making the original movies, there was talk of, oh, maybe we should do an Academy movie. And the only reason they didn't, because that couldn't star Shatner, and Shatner wanted to be on screen. But
what about the idea then that they do the origin story, but they also do a time travel story where the original Spock and Nero come back in time so that they can be a part of their own origin story. It kind of reminds me of like Back to the Future Part 2. Like, Robert Zemeckis, I remember, talked about, he didn't want to, at the end of Back to the Future Part 1, it ends with the DeLorean, flying and going into the future. And I remember him saying that, that was just a joke. And the movie we actually want to make is not in the future. And so what they wanted to do instead was figure out a way of using time travel to go back into the first movie and essentially see it from that perspective again. And that's kind of what they did with this Star Trek movie. They took Spock and put him in his own past. Now it's an alternate version of it. But
I actually really like it because it gives us the excuse of, okay, it's a separate universe, we can get away with some stuff. And it gives a nice little passing of the torch. Here's Nimoy, it's not completely separate. And I think it really pays off in Beyond when he has that photo of the original crew. And it's just a nice moment of,
it's a weird way where you can use sci-fi to literally reboot the franchise in universe. So
it's very comic
book.
That's
kind of clever.
You don't get it in movies, you get it in comics all the time. Like every
I'm
20
not a big
years,
comic guy, so
every 20 years, DC is like, oh, here's some big universe shattering event, and it's going to end with all the comics rebooted.
Yeah. Oh, I had a point I lost. Oh, the photo you mentioned. That does make me wonder if that's in universe of the original crew. How does Spock even recognize the alternate, Jim and
Well, I think we're meant to believe that when they age, they will look like that.
Okay, that's cool. I just wanted to say Spock deduced it through logic who it was.
Yeah.
I was trying to give him more credit, man. This might be the first of the giant ships that don't make sense for Nero's ship. We get another one. We get another one kind of in darkness, but they just start showing up. I would say some of the early ships in Discovery sort of had that. Nemesis. There's the first one. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because Nemesis was the scimitar in that movie. I mean, I felt like Nero's ship was almost, very similar. I mean, it's really dark. It had these wide, huge open spaces.
I do like Nero's ship in that it is clearly hodgepodge together, and it's only being as successful as it is because it's from the future. Like, it does feel like this isn't actually a battleship. This is a mining ship that we're abusing, which is kind of cool.
I'm thinking about design a little bit. So maybe that's the problem I have with these big blonky ships is silhouettes. They say, for design elements, if you can have a really identifiable silhouette, that's best. Enterprise, super identifiable silhouette. And I actually heard this from I think there was the producers of Prodigy. I heard them on an interview saying we wanted all of the characters on Prodigy to have very distinctive silhouettes.
Yeah, it's a classic. The version I always hear about is that's how the Street Fighter guys talk about making characters. But yeah, it's a long time like design trope. I feel like Nero's ship kind of has one. It's just like a big claw coming at you.
Yeah, a pineapple maybe.
Yeah, a pine cone.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's not up there with like the Enterprise for iconic. But I think it's another one of, we talk about it with like the monster you get at the end of a lot of modern movie. It's just like the director just said to the CGI team, "Give me a big spaceship," and there wasn't like a big process of sitting down and designing it.
Right. That is the thing. I mean, model work, obviously, it's more expensive, it's more time consuming, but you've now put that thought into it. So that's, I guess, a big part of the charm.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but the problem is you have to pay model workers union wages, and no one wants to do that anymore.
Well, again, it's a lot more expensive.
You don't have to pay digital artists union wages?
That's one of the reasons why like movies will try and use digital for everything these days, is because there's basically no unions in that.
Really?
So in the Marvel movies, often they won't even do makeup. They'll do it in post because cheaper that way. Makeup artists are on set. They have a union, digital artists.
Wow.
So
Well, you outsource it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Did The Simpsons start that? I remember when The Simpsons was first on. It was a big
oh no,
deal
dude! Like the 1980s Transformers cartoon was being drawn in Korea in sweatshops. Like that's nothing new.
Okay, I was just trying to check when they started doing that, because that was the thing. I think The Simpsons, like, since it was so popular when that came out, people weren't completely like cool with that.
Although it's interesting mentioning Transformers. You said that when you went and saw it, you had the Transformers 2 trailer before the movie. Same writing pair, Orky and Kurtzman. It definitely feels more like they give a shit about Star Trek than it did that they cared about Transformers.
Yeah, that movie was awful.
Like this film, like they are trying to get all the characters right.
No,
And
you could. Well, I mean, definitely. I mean, because they put a lot of effort into the whole Kirk Spock dynamic. I felt like they did a pretty good job with that actually. And trying to really focus on the relationship between the two. And old Spock tells young Kirk, make sure you carry this friendship on in this universe, essentially. They put some effort into this that clearly in Transformers 2 that was just a hack job.
Yeah, if you're making a Star Trek origin film, that's what it's got to be about, right? It's an origin story of Kirk and Spock. It's a buddy cop movie.
And Kurtzman's still hanging around. He's the guy who basically he's the new Rick Berman of Trek these days. It's Kurtzman now, so he obviously likes it, or he wouldn't still be there.
Yep. I guess this film did what the prequel trilogy in Star Wars failed to do, whereas make you care about these friends.
It's a big part of it's the characters. That was a big roll of the dice, I think, when Trek really got rolling again a few years ago. It's like, okay, now we're just going to try and do with few iconic characters. I mean, the most obviously being Picard's back, right? But otherwise, it's there's a little bit of Janeway and Prodigy. There's a little bit of Spock and Discovery, and the new show, of course, is the longest pilot to production ever. But it's
Well, what do you think about the visual template that this set? I mean, I feel like this movie really kind of, when I was watching it the other day again, I feel like this movie really kind of set the visual template for all of Star Trek that's come since. Discovery looks a lot like this. Picard, looks a lot like Discovery. It feels like this movie really kind of, gave this kind of really almost extreme high tech, almost overproduced look.
I think everything
to the franchise
in the Federation looks good. I kind of like the bridges here. I love the ships here. I think it gives a really a terrible aesthetic to everything alien. It's all just spikes and weird and what's going on.
I liked how Vulcan was like endless Vasquez rocks.
Yeah.
I know it's hey, they just cut and pasted the Vasquez rocks everywhere, which maybe that was someone's joke. I don't know, but I if it was a joke, I thought it was funny.
Yep.
I did it again. I cleared my throat into the mic. Okay. Usually the opposite.
Going back to the lens flare thing, right? That's kind of what all the bridges have become in Discovery and stuff. And also Picard, I think, had a fair bit of that. It's meant to look like futuristic, but it looks more awkward to use than just the stuff we have now.
Well, the thing is this, the bridge here, it's actually become retro future quite quickly because it looks like your old iPod, basically. Which I still like iPods. I would like to use. Actually, I still use an iPod in the car, but the click wheel doesn't work, so it's just in the car.
I do like that it has like nice manual throttles and stuff that Sulu can just like shove and twink and pull. Whereas in like Picard, I remember it's all just he's tapping touchscreen buttons. Doesn't look visceral to fly. Whereas it looks pretty fun to fly the Enterprise in this.
Well, I know Jamahl saw a little bit of the new Enterprise bridge on Discovery, but I just saw some production photos for the new show. So I do like, they always wanted to take the red out of the bridge, so they put it back in. I think the red railing is kind of necessary. I did notice actually this time it's on the ceiling a little bit, but they always, since the original series, they've always played down the red. So I guess I do like the primary color burst of this film. Luke knows what my photos look like, so
I do. I love the uniforms in these films. I hate that they go so far out of their way to never ever show Kirk in one.
That could be another practical joke. I don't know.
But you can
Yeah.
count the minutes he wears a uniform across the 3 films on like one hand.
Yeah, because this one, it's the last few seconds into darkness. I think he probably
he,
wears
like-
it the most.
He goes
So-
undercover for a big old chunk of that film.
Right, but the opening segment he's
Yeah.
doing in uniform, and
And
then
then
Beyond
beyond, he's
has
in
the-
like a away mission spacesuit
Right.
the whole time. So yeah,
yeah,
I think because I feel like that is someone at the studios like, oh no, that's too cheesy. Our leading man has to look cooler than that. Like no, I want to see him running around in Command Gold.
Well, you want to see the X-Men running around in spandex too.
Yeah, I also, this is way off topic, but I love the red shirt moment when they're space diving down to the drill.
Oh yeah. I wanted to have like a South Park moment where they're all like, but what about Olsen or something like that, just like obsessing over it, because they gave just like 1 or 2 extra lines just to rub it in. I was like, no, 5 more to really rub it in.
Or if they done at the end, like, you know how if a major character dies in a film, they do a big dramatic funeral for that character at the end. If right at the end we'd got an Olsen's funeral.
Now, speaking of that drill, why did they need that drill? Couldn't you
Yeah.
just park a black hole next to the planet and it would have the same effect?
Yeah,
I
I'm
mean,
pretty sure it doesn't have to be at the core to be effective.
why does it have to be in the center of the planet to destroy the planet?
Maybe it's like the Armageddon explanation why they have to drill.
Again, because it makes for a cool action sequence.
Well, maybe
we
it's
can't
because
just have nothing happen. We have to have something happen.
this is a spaceship full of mining guys and they're really into their drill. And they've talked Nero into it. And he's like, so we're just going to launch the black hole at the planet. No. You got to let me drill to the core of the planet, please. It's like, fine.
It's a pretty cool drill.
Yeah.
It's
And
what I was born for.
The space dive is a really cool scene.
Yeah, and we
did it-
had not seen that in Trek before. Since then, Michael Burnham does that every other episode, but
They do a ship-to-ship dive in Into Darkness as well. Am I remembering right that in one of the previous films they'd wanted to do that and couldn't pull it off?
oh, they had
Like Shatner wanted to do that instead of climbing a mountain, right?
No, he wanted to parachute.
Yeah, but from space, which is that's what they do here. They parachute at the end.
But he didn't really want to parachute from space, or he would have done that last year.
Coward.
Where were we? Drill, making cool black holes. Oh yeah, I want that to be an explanation of the movie. We need to do this. Why? Because it's going to look sick. That's the only reason.
Well, Star Trek has always had this problem where it needs to, kind of, figure out the balance between having some halfway plausible sci-fi concept, but also needing to satisfy the needs of the plot. Like the black holes in this movie. Why does a black hole destroy you sometimes, but other times you go through time?
Mm-hmm.
Did it just decide, on a bad day that we're gonna destroy you this time? But last time we let you, go back in time 115 years or whatever.
Maybe Vulcan was actually just transported 200 years into the past on a timeline.
Well, I think Vulcan will go 200 years into the past, but also inside out.
Okay.
That's the problem. So that's why it had to be at the core. If they just launched it at the planet, it would have just transported the whole planet back through time.
It'd still be gone.
Yeah, but then they'd
Spock
have
would be
200
grumpy.
extra years to prepare to fight Romulus. So.
It's sort of been the topic the entire time, but how is this film holding up now that we're all drowning in Trek now, so it's hard to watch it all now.
I think, like you put it best, like this is how you start someone on Star Trek. Like you're talking about, is it too generic a name to just call it Star Trek? And I think no, because if someone's like, oh, you're into that Star Trek, I want to watch it. You're like, okay, watch Star Trek. 2009 movie, simple name. It's the first thing that comes up if you search on Netflix. Watch that. If you get any enjoyment out of that, then I can start introducing you to this whole world of incredible television and movies. If you don't even enjoy this one, there's probably no chance you're going to enjoy Star Trek.
Yeah, because even the first film was nice enough to add the motion picture just to distinguish it a little bit, where this is just, here is Star Trek. Yeah, I guess it's kind of like you get a McDonald's burger, right? Or you can get a different kind of burger.
Well, it's like when you're bringing it out for a new audience, you don't want to call it Star Trek 11. You know, when they brought out Spider-Man in like 2002, they didn't call it Spider-Man the movie because it's Spider-Man. You just start here if you're a noob.
Yeah, a few years
Or it's like a band releasing a self-titled album.
Or like Weezer, who does every album as a self-titled album. They have had like 5 self-titled albums. It's amazing. Yeah, self-titled album. Oh yeah, I remember. I'm not a sorry, Luke, football fan, but but I remember there's a big to-do there. The NFL is having an existential crisis a few years ago when they realized that their next Super Bowl is going to be Super Bowl L. Like, should we just change the numbers? Because 50 sounds a lot cooler. I think they stuck with the letters, though. They're like, you know, we have to like pretend we have like at least a little bit of intelligence as we pound each other's brains in.
Yeah, they went to numbers for 1 year and then went back to letters.
Oh, it was maybe 50 was the one time they just couldn't live with L. The next one ends up being like what, Super Bowl Lee, if
Lee,
you read
yeah.
it out loud. Yeah.
Super Bowl Lee, Super Bowl Lee.
I've often wondered why they feel the need to continue numbering Super Bowls. I mean, why can't you just call it the 2022 Super Bowl?
That's what everybody else does.
I think it's because although it's held in 2022, it's the capper for the 2021 season. So,
wow.
I think they just want to make it sound, more.
And yeah, they want to sound
special.
super prestigious. Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm surprised you even had that fact for us.
Yeah, I'm a sports guy.
But yeah, I guess this is your gateway. Trek is the main thing. Okay, let's rank it in your field of Trek movies. We'll just keep it to the movies.
Movies.
It's always easy to work out.
For me, I think this is like right in the middle for me. Because it's not up there with the ones that I really love, but there's nothing wrong with it. So yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's where I am. It's fine. It's pretty good. It's entertaining. That it's got a lot of decent, pretty good scenes. The relationship between Kirk and Spock, again, I think they did a good job with that. The plot with Nero doesn't really do much. But it does what it needs to do. It reboots the franchise. It gives us an origin story. It has the twist with old Spock coming back. So yeah, it's a solid movie. It's entertaining, and I'd put it in the middle. I wouldn't put it at the top. I wouldn't put it in the lower tier either.
I was wondering why I put like above and below it, and then I realized I've never even thought of like comparing, say, TOS movies against next gen movies. Like they go on their own rankings, right? So
yeah, I don't think I've ever made a ranking of like the 13 films. So maybe one of these days I'll have to do that.
Going back to the bands, it seems like taking like 3 different bands that maybe have the same member and then trying to rank all of those. It doesn't make sense.
It just feels like the TOS movies did a better job overall than the TNG movies did. And then the reboot movies, just the Kelvin movies, are completely something else.
Now, Luke, would you be able, now that she's re-recorded several albums, would you be able to rank Taylor Swift's albums? Because now there's 2 versions of each.
Ooh, I could. I mean, not off the top of my head. I'd have to sit down and think about it.
Would some of them be separated, or would they all be next to each other?
They would be to be honest, I don't think the re-recorded albums are that different.
Okay. I don't know.
So they would probably be pretty close together in my list.
I'm asking Luke this because I know he's staring at a shrine to Taylor Swift to his right.
Yeah,
There you go.
Wow.
Yeah.
I usually don't get to ask Luke music questions, so I jump at it when it comes up.
I can talk to you about Taylor Swift, Bowie, or Queen, and that's about it. So I definitely couldn't rank the Bowie albums.
You got all the errors, so I guess it's kind of like the Star Trek thing, right?
What's your favorite cheese? Chocolate. Like,
are there any big points on this particular film anyone wants to throw out?
I think I've told this story before, but just after this film, the same girlfriend who I introduced to Star Trek through this film, we went on a trip to Spain for a weekend. and I got a Burger King kids meal because it had Star Trek toys. So I had a little model Kelvin. I don't know what happened to it. Maybe I still have it somewhere in the UK. But you press the button and it goes, Alerta Rioja. That's always what enters my head when I see the Kelvin is red alert in Spanish.
All right. Well, Jamahl, can you tell folks about your website? Like I said, thank you for all your years of running that, because that is my kind of number one TV source for info.
Yeah. So yeah, I've continued to do it. When Trek kind of fired back up a few years ago with Discovery, I had to make a decision whether I was going to try to continue it or not. And at the time, I was honestly kind of non-committal. I wasn't sure if I was going to have time, or not, with young kids and all of that. So I've always said, I'll just try to continue to do what I can do and review as much as I can within, the time parameters that I have. And so far I've kept up. I'm a little behind. I haven't gotten my Prodigy reviews out there yet, and I hope to at some point. Yeah, I've got just about everything covered. I still haven't done the original animated series. That's something that eventually I'll get to, but when I have the time, I'll go back and do that one. But yeah, it's going to be a challenge this year with everything coming down the pike here. We've got Picard coming back next week, then Strange New Worlds after that. There's going to be a couple weeks of overlap with Discovery and Picard, and then the Orville comes back in June, I believe. And so I'm going to have to decide if I'm going to continue with that, and then Prodigy, and then Lower Decks. And it's crazy right now how much Star Trek there is. It's a lot.
Yeah, you would never expect it to be that busy in the late 90s with that sort of task. But...
No, I mean, who would have thought that I'd still be doing this, more than 25 years later. It's crazy that's kind of continued, but as long as I have the desire to do it and have the time to kind of squeeze it in, I don't have quite the length that my reviews that I used to. They're shorter now. They're not as detailed. I don't watch anything more than once usually. I just don't have time for that. I used to watch episodes more than once to really get the facts right and put quotes in the reviews and all of that. But now it's kind of a war of attrition. You just have to get it done, get on to the next one.
I always enjoy reading them, even when I disagree. I know, I like some of the more whack Brandon Braga episodes. So, but they say always Trek, someone's favorite episode, or every episode is someone's favorite and someone's least favorite. So,
yep, there's always going to be a disagreement. Everyone likes different episodes, different ways. Like I said, I feel like I'm the only person who ever defends Into Darkness, but I'm going to continue to defend it because that's my take on it.
I think the Trek I love that everyone hates is that Voyager episode where Chakotay's have boxing in his mind and they're in chaotic space. I understand it's a terrible episode. I just love it.
I think City on the Edge of Forever is a piece of shit.
Some people do.
No.
Well, I think the writer does, doesn't he?
Yes. Yeah. Okay. There we go.
Harlan Ellison. Yeah. I think. Yeah. Did he want his name? I can't remember if he wanted his name taken off or what the deal was. But
Luke, what is the terrible Trek episode you absolutely love?
I like the Voyager one with the Rock in it.
That's because of the Rock.
Yeah.
That one's okay.
Yeah.
That one's kind of middle of the road. I thought. I didn't think it was terrible.
I don't think I've ever not liked Trek. I guess for me and you, Matt, it's not an episode, but Star Trek 5.
Yeah.
I've got a lot of time for Star Trek 5.
I can't join you on that one. Sorry.
We had a run where for ages, all of our guests had admitted actually, I kind of like it. But recently that started to break. We've got people who don't like it now.
Yeah, I mean, it has some good scenes, like the I need my pain scene. That's a good scene, but they're just huge parts of that movie just do not work. Clang to the floor, terrible.
Luke,
Yeah, it's
you buried
great.
you buried the headline for who the first person who hated it was.
Oh yeah, the first person we talked to who didn't like it was Rod Roddenberry. Up till then, all of our guests had loved it.
So that's what.
Because I didn't want to be a name dropping douche, man.
I know, but it's just funny that that's the person who hated it. But go ahead, do our thing, Luke.
You can find this podcast on Twitter at MLSFS Pod. We're also on Facebook, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Wherever you get podcasts, you can find this one by searching Matt and Luke's Sci-Fi Sanctuary. You've probably already done that because you're listening to us. If you want to help keep it online, you can go to patreon.com/podcastio. Throw us $1 a month. And from there, you can find links to all of our other podcasts that me and Matt create. Why not check some of those out?
All right. Hit the what is that thing called? The visceral thing that puts you into warp. The throttle? Is that a throttle?
Yeah. The warp throttle.
Let's just beam over to another planet.
Live long and prosper.
Boy.
Thanks.